Hia ho tiuta ma aen, na pahula papu a tai hama, na tatate awama, na etlapai tai nai awama, ta amai oii. Good morning, my name is Amanda Montoya, and I am from the pueblos of Taos, Oke, Owinge, and Isleta. And I am the Executive Director for the Chamisa Foundation. The Chamisa Foundation is located in Santa Fe. We are a small family foundation that provides funding for cultural preservation projects. And I am thrilled and honored to been asked to be the moderator for this esteemed panel. This opening plenary is grounded in the theme of resilience, justice, and democracy, and it brings together 3 distinguished New Mexico leaders. They will explore profound Indigenous understandings of resilience through the lens of land, climate, and culture. I would like to now introduce our amazing panel. As you heard a little bit ago, Dave introduced Jade, but for those of you that are just now joining us, I will reintroduce Jade so you know her background. Jade Begay, Tasuki Pueblo and Dene, she works at the intersections of Indigenous rights and climate and environmental justice, shaping national and international policy. Jade has worked with Indigenous-led organizations and tribes from the Amazon to the Arctic to advance Indigenous-led solutions and self-determination through advocacy campaigns, research, storytelling, and narrative strategies. In 2021, Jade was appointed by President Biden to serve on the first ever White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. Currently, Jade is a research fellow developing climate data on Native communities in the US. Thank you, Jade, for being here and also for being our keynote speaker. Next is Phoebe Swina. Phoebe Swina is the founder and owner of High Watermark LLC, which works with New Mexico communities, tribes, and pueblos on a variety of issues and initiatives from environmental policy, land acquisition, planning infrastructure, and how governmental policies, laws, and priorities affect tribal communities. Phoebe has over 25 years of experience providing technical, regulatory, project management expertise to construct and implement utility projects, hazard mitigation projects, flood mitigation, environmental remediation initiatives, and emergency and disaster recovery projects. She works to address infrastructure projects and watershed initiatives by utilizing a consensus-based approach that incorporates traditional and local knowledge with science-based planning, engineering, and project management solutions. Her traditional Pueblo background is complemented by formal training in environmental engineering and project management. She received a Bachelor's of Engineering in Environmental Engineering from Dartmouth College and a Master of Engineering Management from the Thayer School of Engineering at Dartmouth College. With this background of tradition plus science, she has successfully managed multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects and initiatives for Los Alamos National Laboratory, Pueblo communities, and New Mexico cities and towns. Phoebe is active in Pueblo cultural activities and is rooted in her Pueblo communities. She has a deep-rooted understanding, respect for, and love of water, which drives her work in the stewardship of water. Her consensus-based approach incorporates traditional, cultural, and local knowledge and includes community education activities that empower local leadership and support resilience. Thank you for being here, Phoebe. Next is Dr. Joseph Swina. Dr. Swina is a professor emeritus at the University of New Mexico's College of Education. He's former governor of Cochiti Pueblo and former director of the Institute for American Indian Education. Dr. Swina has devoted much of his career to assessing student learning and developing training programs for educators who teach American Indian students. Dr. Swina is a member of the Cochiti Pueblo Tribal Council and also serves as president and chief executive officer of the Cochiti Community Development Corporation and chair of the Cochiti Language Revival Committee. Dr. Swina joined Crow Canyon's Native American Advisory Group in 2008 and has served on the Board of Trustees since 2009. Thank you, Dr. Swina, for being here. So now I would like to begin questions for the panel, and this is to all of you. The question is, part of our purpose here today is to introduce conference attendees to the land and place where we are and provide some grounding. Can each of you talk about your work with the land and with the ecosystems that you tend to and the idea of resilience in your work?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. Cochiti, along with the other 18 tribes in New Mexico that are considered Pueblo, and then we have the Navajo or the Diné and the Apache tribes also here in the state of New Mexico. And I think all of us are still very much grounded in our communities, each and every tribe that's represented here in the state of New Mexico. And so our connection, I think, to the land has always been prime and paramount. We have been connected to this place we call home for hundreds and thousands of years. And so our connection began with the land, and over the years, of course, movement about in different situations, different locations, different challenges that the tribes faced here in the Southwest have brought us to this point, to where we are today. And where we're at today, of course, is that continuous connection with the land and the environment. And so in a community like Cochiti, we have our agricultural lands, for sure. We have sacred lands. We have lands that go back for many, many years in the local area, but we also have connections even further to the north, into the Four Corners area and probably all the way up into the Utah area, the Bears Ears. So to begin with, the environment and the land is everything, I think, to the Indian tribes today. And one of the main initiatives of tribal governments nowadays is protecting the land, getting back the land, even though we have to pay for the land, which we do now. I mean, our own land, now very expensive land to get. But those are all attempts, and we put our energy into the land in various ways. And I'll stop there and have the two others talk about it.
Thank you. Well, I feel like I did a little bit of grounding into where we come from and how our tribes are all connected. So like I said, I'm from the Pueblo of Tesuque. I'm also Diné. My last name is kind of a dead giveaway. Tesuque, similar to all these different Pueblos, we have agricultural lands as well. I believe currently there's more than 75 acres in our village alone where we're continuing to grow fruit and vegetables and all kinds of crops for our communities. Hence why we still, just like my relatives here, we're still carrying out a lot of our traditional practices, our corn dances, which we had last weekend. A lot of our ceremony actually orients around our agricultural practices. So we have seed blessings, we have ditch cleanings, all of these things that for us have, I think, a sacred element, and our ceremony. They bring the community together, and we're able to pray and feed and be together, strengthening our community ties, obviously. I'm in this like modern day, I'm really proud not only to continue to participate in all of that, in all of those practices as much as I can, but I'm also proud that my community is very active in modern day fights to protect our lands, to get land back, to steward or manage lands throughout the northern New Mexico area. Recently, Tesuque Pueblo was part of an effort to protect a region called Caja del Rio Plateau. And we are now part of that initiative to protect that area, those lands. We have seed banks. Right behind my mom's house, actually, is our Tesuque seed bank, which, if you ever have the privilege of bearing witness to this special seed bank, try to get an in to that. I think it's pretty VIP, but it's a pretty amazing. I've had the privilege of seeing it, and these are seeds from hundreds of years ago. There's also, seeds that we're getting, working with tribes and indigenous communities way up north in BC, and speaking to the resilience theme, it's in that name, it's in that effort to build resilience. What seeds can we be collecting now in order to prepare for more drought or more rain, whatever might come with the changing climate. So we have all kinds of initiatives. One last thing I'll say, in my work, obviously committed to climate justice and environmental justice, and a lot of that did spring from my participation in my community, in my village. As I was growing up, I started to notice how we were adapting our ceremonies because there was no water in the river. We couldn't practice the ways I remembered when I was a kid. I saw how our climate or our environment was changing because of the climate. Because no snowfall, we had no rain in the river, we couldn't do our ceremonies in the way I grew up. And so that has been a big part in why I do what I do, and just how I stay rooted and grounded in my community. What about you, Phoebe?
Thank you. Goatsi hopa, gochinak sik, zin hanersuta, geispia, zin esse, sunama kukitemeko, sunama gachjame, hin osuta. Good morning, everybody. I would just acknowledge everybody. Thank you again, Necha Hopa. Thank you all for being here today, for your presence here at Tamaya. This land where Tamaya Resort is, I'm from Cochiti Pueblo and from San Felipe Pueblo. My dad's from Cochiti, my mom's from San Felipe. And Hamahake, way back when, this land was used and stewarded by the Tamaya, the Santa Ana people, as well as the San Felipe people where we sit today. So as we were talking, as Jade was talking, as my papa was talking, Dr. Swina, just recognizing that all the lands at some point, I'm not sure where everybody came from, but coming to our lands here in the Pueblo country, almost every piece of land at one point was inhabited, was stewarded, where you come here into New Mexico, especially along the main Middle Rio Grande Valley, as Jade was saying, up in northern New Mexico, along the rivers and streams. Wherever there was tzitz, wherever there was water, those were places that we could have our community sustainable, where we could grow our corn, our vegetables, our fruits, our other traditional crops. And so in the work that I do with the engineering background, what's so interesting, I thought I was gonna make $1 million doing chemical engineering and making a whole bunch of money in that. And I love chemistry and I love engineering. Something happened to me when I was 2,000 miles away from here, from my home. It was like an epiphany happened. I was having trouble in electrical engineering. I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to be an engineer. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. So I took a course on water hydraulics and hydraulic engineering and watching water flow. Water is amazing. Water is so amazing. All of the engineering concepts is naturally in water. The way the water flows, the way the rivers run, the way you have hydraulic jumps, hydraulic falls, all of that, those concepts are in electrical engineering or thermodynamic engineering or any other type of engineering. Water is so beautiful and so strong. And when that epiphany happened, as when I was watching pipe flow in one of the labs, it was like a light bulb went off. But I wasn't that far from home in that one of the other driving factors, like Jade was sharing her driving factors, is what happened at Kukit, what happened at Cochiti, was in our main river that is supposed to flow since time immemorial. My grandma, who passed away in the 1990s, always envisioned, she says, Satao, like the river's always gonna flow there at San Felipe. Our family house is like a, maybe about 100 yards from the river. And, but there was a dam that was built called the Cochiti Dam, the largest earthen-filled dam at the time. It was under the Flood Control Act, and it impacted sacred areas, it impacted our sacred farmlands, and my grandparents had a beautiful garden at Hanishta across the river, and my dad used to call it the Shangri-La. We were totally sustainable in our food and our way of life within Kukit at Cochiti. With our farm, our hunting, our gathering, all of those were sustainable cycles. And my dad talks about that. The fish, even from the river, the boys would go down, do fishing and play, and then roast the fishes on little sticks along the banks of the Rio Grande River. Everything was there, water, vegetation, fruit trees, different types of birds, a complex ecosystem, and all that was interrupted. Laser leveling, bulldozers, excavation, all of that ground disturbance to put a large dam and totally alter for multiple generations of our community that sustainable way of life. So as Dr. Suino was talking about earlier, is our way of life is embedded in who we are. Every day we implement our way of life, from stewarding the land and taking care of, as I teach my Iwas, my kids, about taking care of the corn as their own children. That's their responsibility once they put the seed in the ground. It's a children, and every day you go out and you take care of the children. And I have a quick story. In 2020, we were just talking at the table, and Amanda was saying, yeah, in 2020 during COVID, everybody started farming. And so did we, me and my 2 little ones. And my partner, who's from Santo Domingo, he was a tribal official, so it was all on our shoulders to farm. We're like, oh my God, what do we do? How are we gonna do this? But one day, a big storm came through, all our corn fell. And we're like, oh, that work. And my kids were one was 7 and one was 9. We were out there with little headlights, and we were standing up each corn stalk. And my son, Kukiwi, I told them, remember, you have to love the corn. It's okay, they fall down, you stand them back up. So his vision or his perspective of what love meant was to hug. So the next morning when we went out, he hugged every single corn stalk. But that's what we want to teach our Iwas, to love the land, amo. And so in the work that I do, I hope, not only in professional, but in our way of life and carrying on our traditions, it is hard. It is hard to do the dancing, be present, and then do the policy work, this intersection of policy and fundraising and working with all the partners that Jade was talking about, the collaborators, the co-conspirators in this room. And I encourage you to look at this as an opportunity while you're here in New Mexico, to look at those opportunities to support our Indigenous communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. That was beautiful. I really like that story. And also, I've had the opportunity to visit the Tasuki Seed Bank. It is amazing. It's top secret. The next question here is for Dr. Suina. New Mexico is home to 23 tribes, including 19 pueblos and part of the Navajo, Dene, and Apache nations. Dr. Suina, it's an honor to have you here with us today as former governor of one of those pueblos, Cochiti Pueblo. For those of you who may not have the opportunity to work with tribal communities, why is tribal sovereignty important? What does it mean, and what does honoring tribal sovereignty look like in practice?
Good question. First of all, I guess I'd like to say that I do have a little bit of an advantage here on the stage, and it's my age. I just turned 81. And so for a little while, I saw the old way of life. Before electricity, before paved roads, horse and wagon were mode of transportation. And this sustainable life that we're talking about was very, very real in that day and age. And many men from Cochiti, little old Cochiti at the time, probably just around under 400 population, 32 men went off to serve in World War II. 3 of them made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. When they came home in the 40s and into the 50s, of course, they were influenced by many, many things they saw out there besides conflict. Wage economy, and various things, modernizations of all sorts. And so they brought home these ideas. It was in the 50s, and things changed very quickly in our community. And in that short period of time that it took the United States 70-some years to absorb the automobile, paved roads, wage economy, electricity, telephones, and so forth, all of that came within a span of 8 or 9 years. And in that period of time, change happened very quickly. And as Phoebe said, it was the advent of the Cochiti Dam. 10th largest earth-filled dam in the world, 5 miles long, 25 stories high, right in the heart of our agricultural land, no more than a mile away from our village, our pueblo, downstream. But at that point in time, there was something very, very unique and special about farming and sovereignty. There was just you and your field and all the critters that want your bounty too. The skunks and the squirrels and you name it, they're there. And farmers have to be the most optimistic people in the world, with all the challenges that are there. But still, there was something very sovereign about that way of life. We had little huts out in the landscape, agricultural landscape along the river area. And so it was like a two-way of life. We came back to the village for ceremonies and celebrations, but most of the summer we lived out in these little places. And lots of work to be done, but again, it was just the farmer and the family. And many of these little huts had outdoor ovens, cooking places, 4x4 outdoors to keep the heat out. A couple of fruit trees out there for the sweets and the shade. But it was the family unit that was there. But in the process, it was also other families that were nearby to help you, for you to go help. And so it was a way of life, as Phoebe said, and our young lady here from Tesuki. It was a way of life, and it still is a way of life. And even today, in spite of the dam, in spite of everything that may have happened and changed over time, we still planted a community cornfield just the other day in the Pueblo. Corn, had I opened the meeting this morning, or the governor from Santa Ana probably would have used cornmeal as a prayer, as an offering, because it was corn that made possible large villages, Pueblo villages. So corn took on this cultural dimension of more than just being food on the table. It was sovereignty itself. It was a way of life. And sovereignty is the ability to have the authority to govern your people as your people have been for many, many years. And this we have been protecting over the years as tribal governors and tribal council people and various assistance that we get over time, people like the two young ladies here who are so very powerful in our communities with the expertise that they have brought home through their villages. All of that together, we try to maintain a way of life, an ability to govern your own people as you have been for hundreds of years. And that is the dignity of the native being, the native human being. I think today it is what we have, and it's what we have left. And so with that, I'll go ahead and pass the mic on to another.
Thank you, Dr. Swina. Next question here is for Phoebe. I want to dig in a little more on the questions of land and tribal sovereignty, but bring in this concept that is more widely understood these days around land back or land rematriation. While sometimes well-intentioned, in practice, these projects to return land to tribes or indigenous communities can be expensive, extractive, or burdensome to Native communities. Phoebe, can Phoebe, you have some experience with this. Can you tell us why land rematriation is important and what to be cautious around?
Thank you, Amanda, for that. And to start off my thoughts on this question, I'm going to go back to my papa, my grandfather, Cree is his name, Papa Cree. When he taught me about our land, he taught me about the names of places, like peaks, like Pinshishi, Bearhead, like Gilwitney, which is now called Bandelier, the Frijoles Canyon, different areas, some areas in the landscape that Jay mentioned earlier, the Caja del Rio, and Kukitime, where the way my dad kind of starts to think about Kukit is we're like Kutiki, where Kuti is the mountains. And thinking about we're like the mountain people. So all those, as I shared earlier, all of the land, it looks like open land. Wilderness or just a bunch of trees. Those were our villages are there. They're not, it's not we're there, they are there today, present. And we still have that connection to all of those lands, especially Kukiteme. So all the mountains, as I look at when I'm at our village at Cochiti and I can look up, and I'm really blessed. I'm so blessed, which is unusual for a woman to know many of these places. And Dr. Swina, my papa here, and we even walked some of these places when we got our land back. And walking behind him, I was telling him on one of our outings, I had like deja vu. It was when we were out in the mountains, we were walking the border of a land that we were about, that we had just, the pueblo had just reacquired, called the Cañada de Cochiti. And that goes back to what my papa Cree said to me. In 2001, my dad was the lieutenant governor of the pueblo. The pueblo of Cochiti almost secured that land when it was under the University of New Mexico. And a long story, there's so many resources on that land, old villages that are still there, that we still have connection to, other areas. And it didn't happen in 2001. And I remember I went to the meetings with my dad, because he picked me up from the airport when I came back from school, and I just happened to be in that one meeting with him and the governor at the time. And I saw the deal not happen. And then went home, and Papa said, every last penny, whatever it takes, every last penny. He was telling my dad as the lieutenant governor. I just happened to be there. And I was like, wow. So fast forward, and Dr. Swina, when he was governor in 2014, was instrumental in setting the wheels in motion. After the 2001 land deal didn't happen, there was a 75-year lease put on that land. 75 years, I'm sitting there, I'm like, it's not gonna happen in my lifetime unless I live in the hundreds. Well, the fires came in 2011, devastated the upper watershed. And so there was flooding on that land, and the leaseholders couldn't maintain their orchards. They were afraid. So the silver lining for us about the fire is now the lease came up back on the table because they wanted to get out of there. So Dr. Swina, when he was our governor in 2014, started that process. It finally was completed in 2016 after over $10 million the Pueblo had to come up with. It was a huge puzzle piece. I felt like a house of cards. If one card happened to fall, it wasn't going to go forward. And I remember Governor Nicky Garcia was the governor, and he asked me, is this what we need to do? And I remember I went back to my dad at the time, and I was like, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble because I know what $10 million could do for our community, for services, we're a non-gaming Pueblo. We don't have those financial resources. From the white man's world and infrastructure, I know what that $10 million could do. And I told Dad, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble when Governor asked me that question. And then he was sitting there, he said, what did Papa tell us? Every last penny, because the land means that much. That's what Papa said. And he said, if somebody is making $1 from that shouldn't, honey, it's not on you. It's on them. And all you can do is do it for the right reasons and support, not for you, not for me, Yatni Kutni, for the future, Amo Iwas, the kids and those yet to be born, for what is on that land and our connection to that land. So I said, okay. So when we talk about those pieces and all land is sacred in its own way, and those lands, because of proximity to our main villages that are still here today, that are, where much of our people still live, we still have that responsibility. We still have, I tell my Iwas, it's in our bones, it's in our blood. We have that responsibility to steward those lands and take care, put our hands on it when appropriate, in areas where it's appropriate. And like a seed bank, there are areas that are VIP. There are areas that only certain people can go, and that is who's appropriate to take care of the land. And so on all of that, to share just that little story, it is hard knowing what $10 million would have done for our Pueblo, and all the work that our governors did to even have that opportunity, all the work, the devastation in our watersheds that had to happen to have us that opportunity. All of those, and hopefully in the future, our generations to come will benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one last question, and this is for Jade. We heard you speak about the reframes around resilience and rising up in challenging times. I want to follow up with you on resiliency in our movements for climate justice. Right now, a lot of progress of the past several years is threatened. How do you think about resilience in our climate movements right now?
Oh man, that's so personal and deep. For me, I think I don't personally use resilience when I think of this moment. I'm more thinking of, which is very on brand with climate, I'm thinking more about adaptation. How is it that we need to adapt in this moment? And while staying grounded, right, in our principles around climate justice, I think that's actually something I'm seeing in our movements, people kind of, should we adapt our language? Climate is being attacked in all these various ways. Should we, stray away from these terms? And sure, maybe that's strategic to some extent, but I think continuing to just really dig into those values, those principles around the justice aspect, not forgetting that ultimately our climate work is about people. It's about human rights. It's about Indigenous rights. It's about tribal sovereignty, self-determination. And sure, we might need to switch up the messaging and code switch and adapt in these new ways, but those principles we can't lose sight of those principles. I'm actually excited about the ways we might, figure out how to outsmart those that want to undermine our work. I'm seeing people adapt and become agile and reflect and actually think about, does this model work right now? And if not, if it's so vulnerable, how can we evolve? And so, to your question, I'm thinking, sure, how can we bounce back from what's happening, but also how do we adapt, become less vulnerable, and evolve? Ultimately, that's where I want to get to a place of being so evolved that we're not as vulnerable as we might be in this moment.
Yes, thank you. We are approaching the end of our time. Unfortunately, we started late. So our panel will be around after we are done here. So feel free to come and talk to them and ask any questions that you might have. Let's give them a round of applause.